Just so that, just in case it had slipped everyone's mind, there will be training after the meeting, straight after. There'll be a 10 to 15-minute break, and then there'll be a training session on waste, because I thought it'd be helpful to have that training in person, because there's lots of exciting questions we can ask about waste. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning and welcome to the Environment and Green Investment Committee. I would like to begin by welcoming members, officers, members of the public or press, and those watching via live stream to the meeting of the Environment and Green Investment Committee at New Shire Hall. The Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and use social media during the meeting. But can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place, and I will turn my computer to silent. Or will I? Please be aware that this meeting is being live streamed and that a recording of the meeting will be available to view on the County Council's website. There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, please leave by the nearest marked fire exit and assemble in the car park. The closest fire exit is by the middle doors on my left. Agenda item number 1. Notification of Chair and Vice Chair. The first item on the agenda is the notification of the Chair and Vice Chair. Will the Democratic Services Officer please present this?
Thank you, Chair. This is to notify the committee of the appointments of Councillor Roz Hathorn as the Chair and Councillor Adam Bostanchi as the Vice Chair of the Environment and Green Investment Committee by full Council.
Thank you. Item number 2. Apologies for absence and declarations of interest. Would the Democratic Services Officer report any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you. We received apologies from Councillor Peter MacDonald with Councillor Anna Bradnam substituting.
Does any member or officer wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? Frank.
Thank you, Chair. So there's a question that's been registered which relates to this land, which is a wholly owned company of the council. I'm one of the council's appointed directors of that company, so therefore I have a conflict of interest, and I'll leave the committee while that question has been asked and responded to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Item number 3, minutes. We are being asked to approve the minutes for the meetings held on 13 March 2025 as a correct record. If any committee member wants to raise a question on the accuracy of the minutes only. Okay, I see no object. Oh, Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check in page 7, which was talking about corporate performance report. There was a reference to developers being required to fit pipe work, but this was for broadband. And I wondered if there's 3 references to pipe work in that. And I wondered if we're talking actually about ducting. It's a pedantic point, but I just wondered if that's what was going on.
That is correct. It is ducting. So would you like an amendment?
I'd like to suggest that amendment. The other one was slightly odd wording in page 8, talking about, let's see, where are we? It's 1, 2, 3, 4th bullet down. And it says, this was talking about, we were talking about the amount of vegetation and greenery and nature we had within our assets. And it says officers confirmed that the low tree, I had asked a question and said, is this the case? Officers confirmed that the low tree cover of 8.8% on highways was due to areas being outside of council's management and responsibility, as these would be on private land. I understand what that means because I asked the question, but I wondered if it might be more helpfully expressed as officers confirmed that the low tree cover of 8.8% associated with highways was because the hedges and trees are almost always on private land or something like that. It just seemed a bit of a weird way of expressing it.
So I do think I understand it. I mean, it's basically saying it's
If you're
on
happy
private
with
land.
it
I think
is.
the reference to private land is sufficient to clarify.
Okay, right, that's fine. The other one, sorry, there was a third one, and that was the next bullet down from that. It's talking about getting money, funding to do a thing, and it says the money received would be used to establish a relationship with Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group, East of England, to ascertain appropriate locations for planting schemes. Was that actually what the money was going to be used for? I thought it was going to be used in association with the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group. That's a query, and I just wondered if we could check that, because if we're using money to establish a relationship with, it just doesn't sound very ethical, is all I would say. So if we could just check that, and I'm happy that you and the Vice Chair agree the wording of that afterwards, if you're happy with that.
Do you want to turn the microphone off? Do any officers have any comment to make on that? Phil?
Yes, I can respond to that. So the money we have, it's from Woodland Creation Accelerator Fund, which is the Forestry Commission funding. So we're looking to work with FWAG, who have connections with the sort of farming landowner community, to help with finding where the right tree in the right place can be. So where land is suitable for planting trees, etc. Does that help clarify, or?
So do we think that is captured by the expression, the money received would be used to establish a relationship?
It is sort of slightly oddly worded.
Okay, so perhaps in delegation with the Chair and the Vice Chair, we could just review that language to clarify.
Yeah, we can review it, yeah, because that relationship already is happening. So it's gone beyond the establishment phase.
I understood you already had a relationship, and it was used, you were considering how that money might be best used between the two groups.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. So if members, thank you, Phil. So if members are happy, myself and the Vice Chair will work with Democratic Services to just amend that accordingly. We will amend the first reference to use the word ducting, and we might look at the one about 8.8% on highways, but we are making sure that we keep to the spirit of what's been discussed here. So in which case, are members happy to approve the minutes as published with those? Councillor Tierney.
Sorry, Chair, I really don't mean to be difficult, but I don't think we can vote to approve the minutes. If you haven't finalised the minutes yet, it would be inappropriate, I think.
Would Democratic Services like to suggest how we move forward?
I think we can have a look into this and then seek further information on how to go forward, if that's all right.
We bring the decision to the end of the meeting and have some wording proposed by the end of the meeting.
Yep.
Okay, let's do that. So in which case we will move on to the action log. Attached to the minutes is an action log. Do officers have any updates?
No, there are no updates to report. Thank you.
Do members have any questions about the actions log? In which case we are therefore asked to note the action log. Item number 4, petitions and public questions. There are no petitions this month, but we have one public question for which I'm noting that Frank Jordan will be leaving the room. The question is from Councillor Lara Davenport-Ray. Can I invite Ms. Davenport-Ray to address the meeting? Could I remind you have 3 minutes. The time will be indicated on the screen, and there will. Yep. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Lara Davenport-Ray. I'm Huntingdonshire's Cabinet Member for Climate and Environment, and I'm also a member of the Combined Authority Committee, which will gladly receive your comments on the local nature recovery strategy that you'll talk about later today. In 2021, This Land Limited received planning approval to build up to 230 homes on land south of Cambridge. This Land Limited is a company 100% owned by Cambridgeshire County Council. The site between Babram Road and Warts Causeway is now named Adeva Park. The planning approval included important conditions requiring heat pumps, good levels of insulation, and solar panels. In March, This Land applied to alter Phase 2 of their planning permission and remove the requirement to include solar panels. This Land claims that changes in building regulations and decarbonization of the UK energy supply should absolve them from their obligation to provide solar panels on their new homes. Across Cambridgeshire today, many new build houses will be sold, some just outside this building in Alconbury Weald. Sadly, very few will be fit for the future. They require immediate retrofit by homeowners and landlords to reduce energy bills and ensure the energy security of our country. In its published climate and environment strategy, this council committed to a target for all buildings owned and occupied by the council to be fossil-free by 2025. 2025, that's today. The actions of this council serve as an example to others, so it's deeply disappointing to see such a discrepancy between the environmental policies of this council and the actions of this council's wholly owned development company, searching for a way to cut corners on sustainability at the expense of Cambridgeshire residents both now and in the future. As Carbon Neutral Cambridge has explained, this land is owned by the County Council and has been lent over £100 million in public money. It's only fair that this land also contribute to the public benefit by assisting with decarbonisation. Given the pledges made by this council and the urgent need for the UK to decarbonise, why has this council's wholly owned company applied to emit solar panels in Phase 2 of its housing development at Adeva Park? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davenport-Ray. Thank you for bringing your concerns to this committee today. I absolutely hear them, understand why you're raising them, and give you my assurance that I take them very seriously. This application for variation of a planning consent is, I understand, being taken to Cambridge City Planning Committee tomorrow. It is that committee which will determine the application. The application is made by This Land, an arm's length company of the County Council, which makes its own decisions, acts autonomously, and operates separately from the County Council. This means that the council does not control day-to-day decisions about how this land designs and builds homes. As councillors, we can hold our own views, but we have no authority to go into this land, throw our weight around, and make the company bend to political will. The council has, though, required This Land to bring forward land in accordance with any local plan requirements, including sustainability and environmental matters. Governance of this land occurs at the Shareholders Subcommittee, a body of this council set up in January of this year to resolve confusion in the relationship between This Land as a council-owned company and the council itself, including its councillors. I believe this confusion, which had existed from the moment of the establishment of the company in 2018, was not in the best interests of This Land, the County Council, or the people of Cambridgeshire. The clarity of the relationship between the County Council and This Land has improved significantly since 2021, and even more so since the Shareholders Subcommittee was set up. The decision to remove political involvement from the board of This Land is in accordance with best practice advice, and I believe is the right decision in regards to a company with significant financial commitments to the County Council. It has been a difficult decision. We have listened to and acted on good advice and taken a decision which stops us interfering. There are no longer politicians or board members with strong political affiliations sitting on the board of This Land. This committee, the Environment and Green Investment Committee, has taken on the responsibility of getting the county to net zero by 2045. This is the committee that challenges and holds the rest of the council to account in its aims to reach net zero and increase sustainability, resilience and nature. Those are key commitments of this administration, and we will carry them out in a way which does not undermine the right approach to the council's governance of its arm's length company. The council will provide a further written response within 10 working days of this committee or directly after the planning committee decision if the item is delayed. This response will be published on the website. If I can ask for someone to let Frank know that he can return to the meeting, please. Thank you, Councillor Davenport-Ray. Item number 5 is the Local Nature Recovery Strategy. Can I ask Quinton Carroll, Head of Natural and Historic Environment, to present this report, which is on page 21 of your agenda pack?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my name is Quinton Carroll. I'm Head of Natural and Historic Environment here at the Council, and with me is Phil Clark, Biodiversity and Green Spaces Manager. We're here to present this paper on the Emerging Local Nature Recovery Strategy, which I'll refer to as LNRS for simplicity, which is under development for the Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority. I would like to start by explaining that this committee paper is actually running ahead of the Combined Authority's own committee, which Councillor Davenport-Ray mentioned earlier. That's taking place next week on the 18th of June, when effectively the CPCA will be seeking approval of the draft LNRS to go out to consultation to all supporting authorities, which is something I will come on to as well, what those are. That consultation period is only 28 days. And so what we're seeking today is the committee's endorsement to advise the CPCA that this LNRS can go out to public consultation. Because of that, because of the disparity of the timings, Appendix 1 of the committee report, which is in effect the full LNRS, was only able to be published on the 10th of June rather than the prerequisite period. That's simply because it hadn't been approved for publication. Whilst I acknowledge that this meant that Appendix 1 was published very, very close, I have sought assurances from the Democratic Services Manager this is still in line with governance requirements, and she has confirmed this since the committee paper and other supporting documents were published in accordance with access to information requirements. Before going into the detail in the report, I would also like to highlight that the report is based on the Council's role as a supporting authority, rather than the work that officers of the Council have undertaken to support the Combined Authority in producing the draft LNRS. The focus, therefore, should be on whether the draft LNRS meets its statutory requirements, which I will go over, as fully engaged with other local authorities and organisations as is required, and is therefore suitable for public consultation by the CPCA, rather than the actual specific content of the LNRS, which is there for public consultation and further approval to deal with. Excuse me. So, in essence, the report before you is specifically seeking delegated authority to enable the Council to respond to the CPCA when they contact us after the 18th of June to ask for our approval for public consultation. So, as the report highlights, LNRS is a statutory requirement under the 2021 Environment Act and is a key lever of the government's approach to tackling the nature crisis in England. For background, the UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world, and Cambridgeshire one of the most nature-depleted counties in the UK. Just to give you an example, tree canopy cover in Cambridgeshire is less than 10% of the total land area, against the national average of 13%. So we, and in response to this, we, alongside other public and third sector organisations, have adopted an ambition to double nature in response, and LNRS is a key part of that. The Environment Act requires England to cover by 48 responsible authorities, which for Cambridge and Peterborough is a combined authority. Each responsible authority receives funding to lead a collaborative development process involving multiple stakeholders, most prominent of which are the other local authorities in the responsible authority region and Natural England. Collectively, we are the supporting authorities. So ourselves, the 5 districts, Peterborough and Natural England, we are supporting authorities. And under the LNRS legislation, we have defined functions at various stages of the development process of the LNRS, of which we are now at one of them. Appendix 2 of the report sets out who the other stakeholders are who have been involved, and includes Natural Cambridgeshire, the Wildlife Trust, Cambridge Past, Present, Future, the Environment Agency, Forestry Commission, etc., and critically the NFU. The County Council was asked by the Combined Authority to lead the development of the LNRS, so co-chairs alongside Natural Cambridgeshire, the steering group, and we have used the grant monies provided to CPCA to employ officers to do the work. It's been a long process, but the LNRS is now in its final stage of consultation. The 2023 statutory regs for LNRS state that the responsible authority, CPCA, must provide all supporting authorities with a consultation draft of the LNRS and request their comments. Following receipt of that consultation draft, the supporting authority has 28 days to make a formal response to allow the document to go to public consultation. As I've already acknowledged, the CPCA's Growth Committee meets on the 18th of June to approve on their part that consultation to take place. So the actual consultation period will end for us on the 17th of July, following which the document will go to a broader public consultation. After that, which is programmed to end in mid-September, there are final changes made to the document, and then the supporting authorities, including ourselves, will then be asked again to endorse the LNRS. So we have 2 goes at it, in effect. Hence, it's important to stress that we are not asking today for a formal approval of the LNRS. We're asking you to approve it for consultation. And in reaching the recommendation, what we've done is we've looked at what the statutory requirements for the LNRS are, because the regulations are actually quite clear. They're published in March 23, and these state that each LNRS must firstly agree priorities for nature's recovery, secondly map the most valuable existing areas for nature, and thirdly map specific proposals for creating or improving habitat for nature and other broader environmental goals. The LNRS documents as they currently stand contain a thorough review of the current state of nature and why nature is a priority in part 1 of the documents that you've seen. Then part 2 lists priority landscapes, habitats and species for recovery. It's identified 144 target species in nature for Cambridgeshire, both locally important and nationally important ones. And it's also identified actions to improve habitats by landscape type, so woodland, grassland, wetland, broader habitat mosaics, rivers and streams and ditches, farmland, and also the urban environment, which is also very, very important. It's also connecting to existing nature ambitions, such as the Natural Cambridgeshire Priority Landscapes, which there are 6, I believe. The Cambridge Nature Network, the Hunting Nature Network, and it will also help us deliver, through the identification of habitats and species, or it will also help the County Council deliver against our biodiversity and tree and woodland strategies, which were approved by this committee at its last meeting in March. Furthermore, the regulations state the responsible authorities must work together with partners when preparing the LNRS and then when reviewing and preparing it for republication. The requirement is to review the LNRS every 5 years, both for progress and for changes, because obviously nature changes. And in essence, this collaborative approach is providing a single vision for nature recovery and the use of nature-based solutions that all interested parties have been able to contribute to. It builds and strengthens local partnerships that will be important for carrying it out, because no one organisation can do this ourselves. We have to work across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough and across the UK. And it involves the people who own and manage the land and people who take the regulatory decisions, so in this case, mainly local authorities, so they can contribute as well. And what they've done is say a steering group has been set up that has all these supporting authorities involved, and that's been operating since the regulations were finally issued in March 2023, and a further 19 organisations from across the nature, charitable and land ownership sectors have been involved. That steering group has been co-chaired by officers from the County Council and the Director of Natural Cambridgeshire to make sure it is truly a collaborative approach as required. And we understand that other supporting authorities and stakeholders are generally enthusiastic about how it's being prepared and about the contents of the LNRS. And so that extensive engagement as required by the regulations has been fulfilled. So based on this, our recommendation to you today is the LNRS meets its statutory requirements, has fully engaged with other local authorities and organisations, and is therefore suitable for public consultation by the Combined Authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, so we are discussing whether the process of developing this LNRS is correct and whether we are happy with that. Members, do you have any questions for Quinton, who is supported by Phil Clark as the Biodiversity and Green Spaces Manager? Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, it's not exactly a question, just more, I'm hoping that I can make a point to the report presenter and all other report presenters. Perhaps when we're doing these presentations, we could avoid the abbreviations and initials and acronyms, because I know public are watching this. I know that we in councils get tied up in these things and we know what they mean, but the public can sometimes get lost by a presentation they're watching if it's full of initials. That's no disrespect to the presenter, just I think it would help people if we tried to avoid it. Thank you.
I think that's a very good point. Councillor Watt.
Well, it seems that we're talking about governance today of an organisation that is going to facilitate more woodlands, more nature, more trees. And I'm very much in favour of that, by the way. I spend at least 10 hours a week in woodlands with my 2 spaniels. But what have you done so far to get any trees planted in open countryside?
This is a question that doesn't relate to the question under discussion. So can I suggest we take this question outside the committee? If you have questions about the process of how this report has been written or directly pertinent to this report, then this is the place for those questions. Frank.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Watt. The County Council has a tree and woodland strategy that's been considered by this committee previously, so we can circulate it to yourself and to members of this committee, so you've got that historic strategy and information relating to our approach to tree and woodland enhancement. So we'll provide that information. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That was very helpful. And it was debated at the last Environment and Green Investment Committee, so you could go back and watch it on YouTube. Councillor Rees.
Hello. There we are. Too often, the environmental regulations are well intended, but ignored or overruled in practice. So my question comes from what is in the plans and who is going to enforce them? I want to clarify first, what is the status of the LNRS or the, well, sorry to use the acronym, the
Local Nature Recovery Strategy.
Thank you, Chair. The Local Nature Recovery Strategy in planning law. So does it take precedence over the local plans? What's its status in relation to national planning law? And secondly, if this is rejected by DEFRA, what is the backup plan for the Cambridgeshire? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I can respond to that. So local plans, when they're renewed, will have to refer to the LNRS or the Local Nature Recovery Strategy in terms of where habitat creation needs to be, but where also important existing habitat. So, for example, sites of special scientific interest or SSSIs. So it will be a material planning consideration. locally, and it will also feed into other local plans like neighbourhood plans. So when neighbourhood plans are produced, they'll have to refer to the LNRS. Nationally, it's mentioned in the National Planning Policy Guidance Documents, or the NPPPF. So again, local plans will have to take account of what that says in those national plans. So there is a planning route that will refer to LNRSs to make sure that it's taken into consideration. In terms of enforcement, well, it can't be enforced, but because it has to go through that legislative process, then it will be taken account. And the other thing that's important to mention is that when new development takes place and they carry out their biodiversity net gain, BNG assessment, they will get an enhanced accreditation for identifying how the sort of mitigation they provide for loss of any habitat is also identified within the LNRS. So it has been tried to join it all up to make sure that everything is taken into account. But that's probably the best answer I can provide, if it answers your question.
Thank you. It's just I'm still wondering: is there a clear hierarchy of the status? Can it will be referred to it? It might be considered when writing, but that's all a little bit easy to ignore if you catch my drift.
Agreed, it is easy to ignore, but if it's so, in terms of national planning policy guidance, that is the plan that all local plans will have to refer to when they are producing local plans or refreshing them. So it is embedded in there, which will then go through all of the democratic process to approve local plans.
Quinton?
Oh, I was just going to add that another consequence of the Environment Act was, I think it was Environment, wasn't it? The local authorities have an increased duty for biodiversity and nature that we have to report on. Certainly later this year, we will be bringing our first report to this committee for approval. And one of the things we have to do is demonstrate we're serious about it. And that's where all the strategy work that we've done ourselves as the county council, and also through involvement with local nature recovery strategy, that will be taken as part of that, and we will be assessed against our delivery. So to go back to the question of what have we done to plant trees, I know from colleagues on rural estates, we have been planting trees. I just need to go and find out how many, so I can tell you. The other thing you asked is, what if DEFRA reject it? DEFRA will assess it based on their criteria that were set out in the regulations. And to a certain extent, Natural England have, as another supporting authority, have been instrumental in helping us steer the development of the local nature recovery strategy in line with government regulations. And we have quite a strong steer from their regional directors and the regional office. They are quite happy with the direction that we've taken. There is a dispute resolution mechanism within the strategy. So if supporting authorities do not agree with it, then there is a mechanism to try and gain agreement. But fundamentally, what the responsible authority has to do is demonstrate that they have followed the process. And in essence, have done everything that DEFRA have requested to deliver a successful LNRS as defined by central government.
Thank you. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. We're talking about the process here, and the one thing we do know for sure is that Cambridgeshire is actually rather low on natural resources, and so I welcome this plan. And it strikes me that the process that we're going through is described quite clearly at paragraph 3.10, which says that this is our opportunity, the first opportunity to raise objections. And once this has been publicly consulted on, there will be a second opportunity for the council to respond on this prior to the formal publication. So your question was, do we agree the process has been done properly? And I'm very happy, you know, that we are doing the process properly, and this has, we're simply here to note this, and I'm very glad we're doing it. And I just wish we had a longer list of biologically significant and rare and significant species in this area, but many of them have died out. So I'm very glad that we're looking towards ways of protecting them and making their habitat improved and more connected. So I have no difficulty in supporting this and agreeing that this, you know, is doing what we should be doing with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bradnam. I think that was probably a debate item rather than a question. Are there any further questions? Councillor, can you comment? Do you have a question first? Does anyone have any further questions? In which case we'll move on to the debate. Councillor Beckett.
I'd just like to comment that the interactive map tool in Appendix 1, which is referred to in section 3.7, is extremely helpful for local residents in identifying potential areas for biodiversity improvement and for local projects. And I thoroughly recommend any landowners or parish councils or organisations use it as a starting point to help develop their own natural recovery projects. And I'd encourage the development of these easy to use tools as a way to provide public information as well. Thanks.
Any other? Councillor Tierney.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think this is really important work we're doing, and I don't think anybody in this room is going to be unsupportive of it because, of course, helping our local nature recovery is vital. One of the things that I do find frustrating, though, not just here, but also at the similar committee that has existed at the Combined Authority, is that it does seem like we spend a hell of a lot of time talking and not so much time doing. Now, I appreciate what the officer said earlier. Of course, stuff is going on in the background. This committee isn't there to go and plant trees ourselves. But I just wonder if it sometimes feels like we're doing one consultation after another, months and months pass as different committees discuss. We seem to have spent so much time trying to build cooperative work and make sure everything is absolutely democratic that we're causing the whole programme to slow to a crawl, when perhaps there might be some ways to play with it and make it faster. Now, I accept that that's not within this committee's powers precisely, but we can certainly show leadership on it. And I just wonder whether you would agree with that. Hopefully other members will. Perhaps we could do a bit more work on the local nature problem and less talking. Thank you.
Your comments are noted. Would anybody else like to add to the debate? In which case, the committee is recommended to A, note the latest draft of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Local Nature Recovery Strategy that is being finalised for approval by the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, CPCA, set out in Appendix 1. B, note the full list of supporting authorities, including wider contributors in Appendix 2 that have been involved in preparing the draft document. And C, delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of Environment and Green Investment Committee to review the Combined Authority's final consultation draft for the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Local Nature Recovery Strategy and confirm the Council's support for the document for the purposes of consultation. Does anybody have any objections to this? In which case, I see no objections and we will take that as carried unanimously. Item number 6. Thank you, Quinton and Phil. Item number 6, the Eastern Green Links 3 and 4 NSIP proposal. The next item is the Eastern Green Links 3 and 4 NSIP proposals on page 33 of your agenda pack, which will be presented by Alice Tythcott, Consents Programme Manager.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Alice Tythcott, the Council's Consents Programme Manager, so I head up our consents team and oversee the Council's input into all the nationally significant infrastructure projects and Transport and Works Act orders which affect Cambridgeshire. This report seeks delegated authority in relation to National Grid's Eastern Green Links 3 and 4 proposals. The report aims to ensure that officers can make timely responses throughout the nationally significant infrastructure project process for this scheme. Nationally significant infrastructure projects are projects which meet certain thresholds and are considered by the government to be so large and nationally important that permission to build them is granted at a national level by the relevant Secretary of State, which in this case is the Secretary of State for the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. The Council will have to submit timely responses to National Grid, the Planning Inspectorate and central government throughout the nationally significant infrastructure project process to ensure that our responses can be given their full weight. This process often presents us with challenging deadlines, some as short as 2 weeks. In order to meet these deadlines, the Planning Inspectorate advises councils that it is best practice as host authorities to establish delegated authority, hence the paper in front of committee today. And this is the approach taken across the Council's consents programme for all the nationally significant infrastructure projects which affect the county. The Eastern Green Links 3 and 4 schemes are currently in the pre-application stage of the process, and statutory consultation is live, running from the 13th of May to the 23rd of June. Until recently, we were a neighbouring authority for the schemes, so this means that previously no part of the proposals fell within our county boundary. But as part of the statutory consultation, National Grid are considering an underground cable routing option which would pass through the Roman Bank and Peckover division of Cambridgeshire, making us, for the purposes of this consultation, a host authority. If National Grid progress with this option after the consultation, we will be confirmed as a host authority for this element of the scheme going forwards. If they do not progress this option, we will go back to being a neighbouring authority and will have less involvement in the scheme. The Eastern Green Links 3 and 4 schemes propose 2 new primarily offshore high voltage electricity links with converter stations and associated onshore infrastructure between Scotland and England, and most of the onshore elements in England fall within Lincolnshire and Norfolk. The Council's technical officers are currently reviewing the documentation which was released as part of the statutory consultation to inform the Council's technical response. To ensure that we can respond to the statutory consultation within the deadline, whilst allowing officers sufficient time to review the documentation, and to ensure that if we are confirmed as a host authority, we can continue to respond within set deadlines, delegated authority is being sought. So this report therefore seeks approval for delegated authority to be given to the Executive Director for Place and Sustainability and the Service Director for Environment, Planning and Economy, enabling them to submit nationally significant infrastructure project-related responses in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of this committee on occasions where there is not enough time for a report to be delivered to this committee. And in the event that delegated authority is used, draft submissions will be shared with members of this committee and local members ahead of submission, enabling members to input into the process outside of committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions for Alice, who is supported by Tim Watkins, Head of Planning? Beckett.
How often does the council find itself in a position where there is not enough time for a report to be delivered to the committee?
So particularly when we go into examination, which is a 6-month period and has often 7 to 9 deadlines within it, we can find ourselves with deadlines every 2 weeks. So it's extremely challenging to be able to align that with committee timelines. We seek delegation at this stage in pre-application to ensure that we have the mechanism in place. But if applications are accepted for examination, we have to submit a relevant representation to the Planning Inspectorate ahead of examination. And where we can, we bring that back to committee because that sets out sort of our overarching technical concerns. So we always endeavour to bring that to committee if we can.
Any other questions? Would anybody like to debate this item at all? Councillor Bradnam.
Get my speaking in the right order this time. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the officers. So it looks as if we're putting in place a system in case it's needed, but in fact, if the route changes, it may not go through Fenland and Roman Bank and Peckover. Having been on the Environment and Green Investment Committee in the past, I've been aware that we've needed to do this for other projects in order that we give a response in a timely fashion to an NSIP, that's nationally significant infrastructure project deadline. So it's not unreasonable, and it means that we are not delaying the process. So I think it's important, and I support it. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to comment? In which case, the committee is recommended to A, delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability and the Service Director for Environment, Planning and Economy to submit nationally significant infrastructure project NSIP related responses as part of the NSIP process on behalf of Cambridgeshire County Council and its regulatory functions in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Environment and Green Investment Committee on occasions where there is not enough time for a report to be delivered to Environment and Green Investment Committee. And B, note that when delegated powers are used, draft responses will be sent to local members and the members of the Environment and Green Investment Committee ahead of submission. Do I have any objections? In which case, I will take that as carried unanimously.
Just one thing.
Councillor Bradnam.
Can I just ask if we are, and I'm very happy that we do it like this, but can I just ask if we are sent these draft responses, I mean, I'm assuming the point is if members have any wild objections, they should get back very promptly so that there's an opportunity to adjust if the officers feel that's necessary.
Alice or Tim, do you have a response as to how that works?
Yeah, so where we need to use delegation because of the deadlines, we would share the draft response ahead of seeking formal sign-off from Frank and the Chair and Vice Chair. So there would be a window for members to review the draft and comment if they wanted to.
Thank you.
Before we move on to item 7, I have been thinking about the item on the local nature recovery strategy, and I would like to propose an action for the action log. We, as members, so this is a committee where decisions are made and sometimes reports are noted, but we do as members receive a service report which gives us an indication of what action is happening. We are a new council with new members, and I suggest it might be a good idea if members were given an opportunity to give feedback on that report and we review whether we are happy with how we are understanding the action that this area of what is happening within the council, if that is okay. Is that it? Is there, yep, we shall do that. So that could be an action to how we look at actions.
Sorry, Chair.
Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you. Can I just seek clarification on that? Are you asking that an action to bring this back to the committee?
I might no. Councillor Tierney. So Councillor Tierney made the comment that we were not that this council does not. That we have a number of papers coming here which are about talking and discussion and planning and strategy, and it's not about actions. But as it happens, the actions, I apologise for not being sufficiently clear. The actions of this council are not brought to this committee. This is a committee for decision making, but we do receive as members a regular service report, which does outline the actions. Now, that might not be a very effective service report. People might wish it to be written differently, but that would be an effective starting point for us to understand what actions this council is taking. But as a new council, it'd be good for us to review that service report and see whether we are happy with it, whether we think it is outlining the action effectively, and then we can begin to evaluate whether we think the action are the right actions, whether the council should be doing more, but at least we have an understanding of what actions the council is taking.
For clarity, Chair, I was only asking for the point of clarifying the minutes to make it easier to understand what we were asking for. So it's for the service report to come so that we can be clear that any actions that we're deciding on are...
For the service report, it's to encourage members at the next service report to provide comment and feedback, so that if the service report is to be is not responding to members' needs, it could be redesigned and reviewed. Sorry, I wasn't very clear. Apologies. Right, item number 7. Overview of Directorate Budget 2025 to 26 and outturn position for 2024 to 25. Can I ask Frank Jordan, Deputy Chief Executive and Executive Director for Place and Sustainability, to present this report, which is on page 53 of your agenda pack. Frank is supported by Becky Bartram, Strategic Finance Business Partner.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. So the committee will receive financial reports on a quarterly basis. And for the June report, typically what the committee will receive is the outturn from the previous financial year, but bearing in mind that this is your first committee, within the report, I've also provided some context around the budget for the Directorate. So as the Executive Director for Place and Sustainability, one of my principal accountabilities is for the budget that relates to the Place and Sustainability Directorate. And for the committee, one of your prime responsibilities is to have assurance that that budget is being managed effectively. The way that the Council's budget accountability framework does, how it works, is that the budget is structured by directorates because executive directors are accountable. Therefore, the way we present the budget is based on a directorate budget, not based on the committee structure. So that can sometimes lead to some additional questions. So I'm happy to assist the committee as much as I possibly can so you can understand the directorate budget and which elements relate to environment and green investment. So what we've got presented here is the outturn for 24-25, but as I've said, I just wanted to provide some additional information so you have an understanding of the budget that I'm responsible for and how it relates to this committee. So the 25-26 budget that was set in February by full council provides the full details of the budget, and I've provided that information in the report, so if there's any questions that members have, happy to respond to those. But the directorate budget that I'm responsible for is a gross budget of 121 million. It's a net budget of 83 million, and the difference being 38 million pounds worth of income that we secure for our services that we provide. Typically, income comes from fees and charges for the services that we provide, specific grants that we may get from government or the combined authority, and a technical way that we assess income is where we charge certain elements of our activities to the capital programme as well. So in terms of how we spend that budget, and I think particularly relevant for this committee is 57 million pounds of that budget is spent on waste, which is a very significant undertaking. You can see in the reports the amount of waste that we're responsible for and the additional costs that we're currently having to address in terms of waste because of the issues that we've got with our waste PFI contract, and after the committee we're going to provide you some more training on that, but the key issues around that budget is that we do need to bring the PFI contract into compliance with environmental regulations, and when we've done that we'll be able to clarify exactly what the budget will be going forward. In addition to that, though, there's £4 million worth of other spending on key services that relate to this committee, particularly planning, the natural and historic environment team, our responsibilities as the lead flood authority, the responsibilities that we've just been reviewing in terms of consents. And also we have funding in the budget to manage our environment strategy as a council and lead on certain strategies such as those relating to biodiversity and net zero. And in addition to revenue, and again, it's important that the committee reviews the capital programme as well as the revenue budgets. The capital programme for 25-26 includes £10 million worth of investment in household recycling centres. So again, that's the main element that relates to this committee. So that's the broad context for this year's budget, but I'm just going to turn to the outturn for 24-25, and you'll see as a directorate there was a net overspend position by the year end of just over £1.4 million. And the main drivers which relate to this committee for that overspending, the particular issue related to income assumptions that related to what we called energy projects, and I provided some additional information around those projects, but those were projects that were commissioned to generate electricity, for that electricity to be exported to the grid, and for that therefore to create an income for the council. The issue was that there were assumptions about when those projects would be delivered and then the timing of that income, and the budget assumptions and the actual delivery on the ground did not match. Therefore we had a mismatch between income assumptions and income actual delivery. What I am able to say now is that those projects, particularly the significant ones which had the most significant income attached to them, have now been completed. They are now generating, they're exporting, the income is being secured. But because of those issues in terms of that significant mismatch, I commissioned as the Executive Director a full lessons learned review in terms of the way those projects were commissioned and managed. That has been made available to members of the Council previously, again can make that available to new members. And we have completely adjusted the approach that we have in terms of the governance and delivery of such projects. But the other thing I would highlight is that there would be very, very careful consideration by officers, and we would present it very carefully to the committee if we were thinking about entering into further projects of that nature. So that was the most significant issue, and that did create a budget overspend in that particular project because of that shortfall in income of 3.5 million. But you'll see outside of this committee's responsibilities, other parts of the director responsible for were able to mitigate that through additional income that was secured during the year. So that's where we got to that net budget overspend being reduced to 1.4 million. What I do also highlight in the budget as well is that for 24-25, the waste management budget was balanced, and we do highlight the additional costs. Main reason for that being is because we're aware of the waste management challenges that we have set at specific reserves, and therefore, as we get those additional costs, we transfer funding from reserves into the budget, which is why we ended up with a balanced position there. But I think it is just worth noting the pressures that we've got in relation to waste management. And just to give you some further assurance, so you'll get the actual detailed report for 25-26 when we get to the first quarter. The current projection for this year is that we're expecting to have the projection at this stage is a very small overspend of 85,000. So if you compare that to a net budget of 83 million, that's a very small percentage of variance at this stage. But I would highlight that there are risks in the budget, particularly given that we've got £38 million worth of income assumptions. So income inherently has a risk attached to it because we're dependent on demand markets. And the other thing that we're also highlighting as a risk is that energy costs are continuing to increase. So that's not so much the tariffs, it's more about the pass-through costs from distribution companies passing those costs on to users. And that happens at household level, it happens at organisational levels. We have identified those risks and we've got mitigation in place to at this stage, we think we can mitigate that to achieve a balanced budget. So the report therefore gives you that broad overview of this year's budget, the key issues in last year's outturn, and some additional information to give you some assurance around how we've taken forward lessons learned from that outturn position to have appropriate assumptions in this year's budget to have a balanced budget outturns, which is what we're seeking to achieve. And then I'll also just highlight, as I've said, for this year, we also have that £10 million capital programme in relating to household recycling centres. So that will be another area that we'll want to report to you and to give you some updates in terms of how that's progressing. So, Chair, I'm happy to take further questions on either this year's budget or the outturn from last year, and Becky's here to assist as well. Thank you.
Councillor Manning. I'm sorry. Members, do you have any questions for Frank or Becky? Councillor Manning.
I do have a question for Frank. This is probably me being a little bit pedantic and partly relates to something that Councillor Tierney said about abbreviations. Oh, sorry. So this is partly relates to something that Councillor Tierney said about abbreviations. It's just a question really. Appendix A, Section 3, we've got a table. Let's give you a second to get to that. We've got a table with RAG status. I always thought RAG was red, amber, green, but we seem to have blue and black in there as well. I realised that BRAG wouldn't be a particularly helpful abbreviation, but I was just wondering what blue and black are.
Thank you, Councillor Manning. So yes, it is a rating system in terms of the delivery of savings. So blue is effectively that the saving has been achieved, therefore it's not risk any further. So it's completely delivered, therefore we don't even have to attach a red, amber, green to that. Black is that it's probably an appropriate colour, is that because we've identified further issues, that particular saving has not got any ability of being delivered. So it's therefore it's a particular issue. So what I would say on the savings tracker there is that either through a combination of adjusting assumptions in the business plan or measures that we've taken, there aren't any particular risks that we would take through into the 25-26 year that would create concern in terms of overspending from non-delivery of savings. But I would just highlight what we do also have in there is not so much savings, it's the income assumptions, which are the biggest risk for us in terms of 25-26, which we'll see in more detail as we get the monitoring reports in future committees. So I've answered the question there, Councillor Manning. So blue is delivered, black is no way it can be delivered.
So just from my understanding, something goes from red to black if it absolutely cannot be.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, and perhaps for future we'll just make that clear, and so that people have got a clear understanding what the colour coding is as well. So thank you for the question.
Councillor Beckett.
I'd like to make a request that subsequent reports clearly identify the relevant information to the committee. The document includes the full financial monitoring report for all departments, and I think it kind of makes it unnecessarily difficult for us to scrutinise the relevant data. So my question is it possible that the irrelevant financial information could be either omitted or greyed out in future reports?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I would highlight as part of my introduction is it's important to note that the way the budget is structured, because of the accountability, because I'm accountable for the directorate budget, but certainly we can look at how we can, in the cover report, make it very, very clear which elements relate to this committee. And further reflections that I've had on this is that in addition to the reports, I can provide additional information by way of PowerPoints to make it really clear what's the key issues are. And I think the other thing we also would like to do for the committee is provide additional training and briefing on exactly how the budget works for this committee in terms of the areas that it's responsible for. So there's three parts to that. Is that, yes, we'll look at the report, additional information to associate with the report, and then additional training and information. Because it's really important that you understand it to be able to scrutinise it and review it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Becky, is there anything you'd want to add at all on that?
Nothing particularly, but yes, absolutely. We'll work with you on what that report should look like and how to identify what should be in there for this committee to consider. And yeah, the whole finance tables we'll put in there, I think. And obviously this committee, you only have responsibility for part of place and sustainability.
Thank you, and thank you for adding that you will work with us, because I think that's really important that we're in a position where we have said what we need to be able to scrutinise and interrogate this, and we are in a place where we're all happy with the way it's presented, or as happy as we can be. Councillor Wyatt.
Hi, thank you for that report. You've noted that as a result of the overspend because of the project being delayed, we're now making changes to the governance and delivery of those projects. Are we also considering in the budget planning a more conservative approach to budgeting based on assumptions of project delivery, like from the other side as well as the delivery?
So that's a good question. So part of the lessons learned and the issues that were identified, I think the key thing I would highlight in terms of any project which is assuming a construction of a certain period and then securing income, I mean, ideally, you shouldn't put any income assumption into the budget until it's actually complete and generating that income. So a lot more prudence and consideration about the level of income and the timing of that income is the key lesson we already are applying, that we will apply to projects like this. I think the other thing I would highlight, though, is that the council has to have a clear approach around the level of risk it's undertaken, and energy projects, and given the nature of energy markets, that is a high risk situation for the council, and therefore this needs consideration as to whether we ought to do projects in the same way that we have done in the past. We might be able to do things in a different way. So an example, the way we did projects in the past was that we've directly delivered them and directly selling the electricity to the grid. What the alternative approach would be to enable another third party to have access to our land to do that, to take the risk, and then we would get a return, but it would be a lower return because it's a lower risk for us. So I'm just giving you examples of the considerations that we would need to take and advise you as members going forward if we were to do projects like this. But I think the key point is a lot more prudence around timing and levels of income assumed against projects like this.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Councillor Rees.
Thank you. Can I ask you, officer, just part one of the question, what is your understanding of green investment and how does that manifest in the business plan for 2025 to 2026?
Yeah, so the green investment, which is part of the title of this committee, I think, because obviously it was created before I actually was appointed as an officer of the county council, but that was at a time when the council had taken decisions that it would take a more direct approach in providing renewable energy within the county. So that's what referred to as the energy projects, which is where principally the green investment part of the committee came from. Having now delivered those projects and learned from those projects, I think that therefore we're taking a different approach and a different advice to the committee as to what that green investment should be in the future. So an example of that was a report that came to this committee in the last administration around our approach around supporting community energy, which is the council taking more of a enabling role rather than a direct delivery role in terms of supporting a transition to renewable energy in the county. So it can be reviewed further in terms of what this committee would like in terms of a policy objective around green investment. But that's where previously it's been that very, very direct role that we've been taking. And obviously I've highlighted the risk that that creates for the authority if you do take that type of approach. So have I answered the question in terms of my understanding of green investment and how that's related to the council up until now? Yeah.
Yeah, and just I'm still on part one of my question, if I may here. Sorry, but how does that manifest in the nitty gritty of the business plan for 2025 to 2026? I'm looking, what decisions have been made such that it is a green investment, not a non-green investment? Thanks.
Yeah, okay. So it is covered. It's a part of that £4 million revenue budget, and there's a very specific investment has been made. So what the council has allocated is a reserve which is called the Just Transition Fund, and elements of that have been allocated to deliver further improvements around environmental performance by the council. So investment has been made in the budget to further develop our net zero programme, our biodiversity strategy, our woodland creation strategy. So that's specific elements that are included in this budget. So that's what's included. Is that clear, Councillor Rees?
Thank you. So, and part two of my question, it relates to the questions already asked about what information is relevant to this committee.
Questions through the chair, but yes.
Sorry, may I ask? Yeah. The data that we should be fed back, we're receiving a lot of financial numbers, with the pound sign in front of it. I wonder what other kinds of numbers might we be relevant for a green investment?
Can I respond to that? So, not on this occasion, but when we do present the monitoring information around financial position, at the same committee you'll get a performance report, and we also provide an update on the key risks. So the committee will get, at the same time, financial information, performance information and risk information, which brings together that whole story around what are the investments that are being made, what are the projects that are being delivered, what are the outcomes and outputs that are being achieved as a result of that. So that's the information that we'll provide. And as has been previously clarified, it'd be useful to get feedback, and we will endeavour to get as much information for you as a committee presented in the way that's useful for you to understand how the budget works and how it interacts with the delivery of our core objectives and the performance measures that we need to achieve. Is that okay, Councillor Rees? Yeah.
Councillor Watt.
Chair, I was just wondering, are these green investments for the purpose of kickstarting this technology? Are there any plans to eventually sell off these investments to the private sector? And was it the intention at the beginning to launch these schemes and retain them forever and a day?
So the intention in terms of these energy projects in particular was to do two things, was to assist in decarbonisation of energy supply, so more renewable energy projects. So that's what's been achieved, as well as creating an income stream to support the council's medium-term budget. So albeit the timing issue I've outlined, those two things have been achieved. Now, given we have got that sizable income locked into the council's budget, the current assumption is that we will retain ownership of those because we need to continue to secure the income. What I'm outlining, though, is in terms of considerations that we may wish to take if we were to do projects in the future, in terms of whether we take a different approach where we're not necessarily being directly involved in the delivery of those projects. We may consider disposal of those sites in the future, so that would be on the basis that it's the best value option for the council, because we would get the best outcome by disposing of those assets. That would obviously create a capital receipt for the council, but would also lead to a significant reduction in the income that we've got in our revenue budget. So that is something we would only consider if we think it's the best value option at that time. But the current assumption is we're retaining ownership and we're going to continue to manage them because of the income that's in the budgets at the moment. Does that answer the question, Councillor Watt?
Partially. My concern is that when local governments get involved in business enterprise, they keep business enterprise out of the picture. And that's where the innovation comes from. And I think that local governments should be governing and not playing in business.
Comment. Any other questions? Councillor Black.
Yeah, just I mean, my understanding is that these energy projects have been successes, that we're looking at, we are getting income streams from them. And I'm worried if we look at what's happened with this land, where we've perhaps not had the hands-on governance and ensured that it's gone in a good way for the council, is it perhaps rather unfortunate that people are thinking of not reinforcing success and looking at ways of doing things which actually don't give us as much income? And I'm not convinced that in these positions the risk does get transferred to the private sector. I think you see examples of where the private sector takes things over, like our huge waste contract, for instance, and when their facilities are no longer fit for purpose for what we need for waste, all that cost seems to come to the council, not to the private company that's got a hugely favourable contract. So, I mean, I'd urge caution in letting things get out of our control. And in particular, I think this land is not exactly a blueprint to say, well, let's try and keep things out of our control.
It's pertinent to this committee. This is a debate item. I take it there is no question.
Well, the question is, I mean, will we be sure that we get all the advantages of having some control rather than letting things spiral out of our control and into the hands of private actors who may well not have the council's best interests at heart? Thank you.
Not convinced there's a question there for the officers to answer. I don't think there's a question. Councillor Rees, is this a question or an item of debate? Okay.
It's a question provoked by the previous comment that perhaps...
A question to officers, or is it...
It's a question to officers, yeah, and I think it picks up on the earlier point. Perhaps the question here is, what is success for a green investment? I think that's a very important question that this committee needs to think very hard about. So what is success for a green investment? Thank you.
So I think I'm just going to, again, we're talking about theoretics here really, but in the future, if we were to commission further projects, we'd clearly outline what the success criteria are, and we'd give assurance that that would be capable of being achieved. So that would be a combination of environmental, financial and risk measures that would need to be assessed, and whether that's appropriate for the council to take forward. But again, we're not at this point talking about any specific proposals in front of the committee. We're just providing you with information as to what has happened, as to what will happen. So I'll just clarify that point as well. Thank you.
So Bradnam.
I have an item for debate if we've moved into that.
Anybody else have any questions? I have a question. It relates. So it is about council businesses, because there are some examples of small innovative business with lower risk, and I think it'd be helpful if we just referred to them now. For example, Light Blue Fibre has been an effective county council partnership with innovation. Could you just quickly outline how Light Blue Fibre works? And it is an example of there is a whole spectrum of different types of investment. I think it's important for this committee to understand that investment can have a very broad range of what it looks like, and innovation is absolutely key to the heart of this council.
Thank you, Chair. So to give a very brief précis, but before I do that, I'll just clarify that I'm the council's shareholder representative for Light Blue Fibre, and there's a director for Light Blue Fibre. So Emma, did you just want to just outline your role as well? So just so we're clear in terms of declarations of interest.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. So just to explain that I am the director for the County Council for Light Blue Fibre. So it's a company that's been set up with the Cambridge University, and we work together on ducting and other opportunities for connecting digital infrastructure.
So just to add to that, so wherever we have invested in infrastructure up until now, as part of that, we've installed ducting, so it's there, it's available. And then the company that we established, which is a joint venture between ourselves and Cambridge University, effectively markets and sells access to that ducting to broadband providers, and we get a fee for access to our infrastructure, and that has been successful. The other element of that is it supports what we call as a dig once policy. So if we're implementing infrastructure, future-proof it so that you can reduce the disruption that you would have, say, on traffic in the future. So it's a good policy objective. It's a good partnership we have with the university, and it creates an income stream for the county council, and it's a very low risk situation for the council, given that the infrastructure is already there and available, and given it's our assets, we're capitalising on that asset to get the income stream for the council, as well as enabling digital connectivity to homes and businesses. So it's just a précis of what we do achieve. Now, because it's a company, we do report in more formal sense to the shareholder subcommittee, and we will provide information to this committee as part of our performance reports on the performance of that company as well. So that's something, just provide some additional information in future committees. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you very much. Are we into debate then? Lovely, thank you. I just wanted to observe, there's been a lot of discussion about the energy schemes, and I just wanted to remind members that the council took decisions on the basis of members setting a strategy, and the officers deliver what we as members ask them to do. And we did that as a majority decision. We were making innovative decisions to run projects, particularly the Swaffham Heat network, but also the solar arrays, the Babraham Park and Ride, North Angle Farm. All of these were innovative projects which we as a council undertook to undertake because we wanted to, in the case of Swaffham Prior, it was going to be an exemplar of that process. And in fact, it was very well recognised as being an exemplar project. Who could have known at the time when we started off doing solar arrays that that there was going to be a war between Russia and Ukraine, and the cost of steel would go up, and all of those things that have caused delays in delivery. These were projects that we undertook with the knowledge. We knew that there was a somewhat greater than average risk with them, but we undertook them to decarbonise our footprint as a council, and they have done a very good job on that. And we also wanted to raise money. Maybe that hasn't been quite so, no, you've said that they've been successful. But the point is, these were decisions that members took. I'm glad to hear from Frank that the approach to projected income will be more cautious, and I think that's wise. But I don't think we should stop that undertaking, because, for example, alongside all of these, we have put air source heat pumps into a lot of our schools, which have taken them off oil. It's given them more modern systems that are cheaper to run, and we've ended up with a much less carbon hungry school stock as a result. So we've done a lot of things as in the spirit of investment in the future, and I think that's been extremely valuable. Yes, we've learned lessons and we've managed to handle that, and I just think we shouldn't use that as a reason not to look at such projects in future with the caution that Frank has described. Thank you, Chair.
Would anybody else like to contribute to the debate? Councillor Watt, bearing in mind you have made some comments which are debate items already.
Yeah. Well done for what you've achieved. Okay. Well, I've only just turned up today, but you still have to keep reviewing what you've done and ask yourself every day, really, are we still doing the right thing? And I understand the argument of public money, it's patient money, it can take risks, it can be innovative in the sense that it can take risks where private money wouldn't take that risk. But even so, I still feel that going forwards, we end up being a corporation instead of a local government. And we need to keep an eye on our core job, which is filling in potholes and making sure the lights are on and providing essential services for the vulnerable. And you can get diverted into becoming a business corporation, trying to generate profits. And I don't think that's what we should be about.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Any other comments? Councillor Tierney.
Yeah, thanks. I think it might be a good idea, actually, going forwards to have a look at the previous investments that we've done and then perhaps bring a report which shows what profit they've brought the council, what improvements they've brought to the environment. Not a long report, not hundreds of pages, just a brief report that sums up how each of the things we've done have performed. I mean, I think sometimes we cherry pick things a little bit. It's fair to say that our attempt to put heat pumps into Finland was not successful. We had to back turn on it completely. I think sometimes we look at these things with rose-tinted glasses. I'm not trying to be critical. I do think that we should be trying to do things which help the community and the people in it. I just would like to see evidence, and I'd like to see it presented in a way that is honest, so we can have a look at what worked well, what didn't, and then that will help colour our decisions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Black, you have spoken at some length already in the debate, so I'm inclined to not ask you to speak. Would anybody else like to make comment? Thank you. In which case, the committee is recommended to review and comment on the report. We have commented. Do I see any objections? In which case I will take that as carried. Item number 8, agenda plan, training plan and appointments. Would the Democratic Services Officer update us on any changes to the published report?
Thank you, Chair. There are no updates to report on the agenda plan. Dates are being proposed for some of the sessions on the training plan, and these will be shared with members once confirmed. And finally, updated appendices 3 and 4 were published yesterday, providing nominations for representatives on the outside bodies and internal advisory groups.
Thank you. And I understand there are additional nominations as well. So so there are some decisions still to be made on the outside bodies and internal advisory groups. So the committee is recommended to review its agenda plan attached at Appendix 1, to B, review its training plan attached at Appendix 2, C, review the appointments to outside bodies as detailed in Appendix 3, D, review the appointments to internal advisory groups as detailed in Appendix 4. Do I see any objections? Councillor Tierney.
I'm sorry, Chairman. Chair. On my copy of this, there are no names of anyone who's been appointed other than a couple of previous ones. Have I misunderstood something?
So this is an item that I have been advised did not have to be, has been updated over the week, and a most recent copy was sent out this morning. So I apologise that is late. There have been requests to different political groups to submit a representative, and that has been a process that has taken time, that has happened over the week. So it is a live document, but I will make sure updates are shared with all members of the committee. And
Thank you.
Chair, a recent
Councillor
update was published on the website, so you can pick it up from the website now.
I'm just looking at that now. It's still has no names on it.
Mine has.
We can resolve this.
Weird.
It's got names in it, so
if we're happy, it'll be Councillor Bradford.
It's and in the appendix at the bottom of the at the bottom of the short agenda.
All right, that makes sense. If it's not,
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
Already circulated. Councillor Beckett.
There is no qualification required to be a local councillor, and the same is true of being a MP as well. And I think that's quite right. However, it does mean that some members across all committees, if they've not already had previous experience of reading financial reports or managing budgets, may struggle to understand fully what's written on some of these reports. My request would be for a short training session, actually, to be available for members to interpret financial monitoring reports and other reports so that we have a fair opportunity to understand them.
That seems like very sensible. Is that part of the planned training, or? Okay, we'll make sure that is included in the training plan. Any other comments, or Councillor Rees?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just picking up on this previous suggestion for the financial training. I think it would be great also, given that this is the Environment and Green Investment Committee, if we could have ecological training, how are climate, biodiversity targets measured, how to read those kinds of reports. That seems just as essential. So thank you.
Carbon. We can get additional, we were able to get external training for carbon. Is that still a thing?
So, Chair, that's the carbon literacy training which we can make available. But we did also have in the training plan already information around the training for things like net zero, climate change, environmental management. That is included in the training plan already.
The carbon literacy training is a day-long programme, and I thoroughly recommend it. It's incredibly useful, and I thoroughly recommend that all members of this committee take the opportunity to take that training. And if I can ask Democratic Services or whoever is responsible to circulate the information about that so that members know and can sign up for that. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. We, as part of this committee before May, had some quite extensive briefings from about biodiversity net gain, did we not? And how that's calculated, or am I remembering the wrong council? Because we have had it and it's available, so I would have thought we could look at that as well.
Is that part of the training, Frank? Yeah, we can include that. We can make sure that's included. Are there any other questions? In which case, are there any objections to these items as noted? And we will take those as carried unanimously. I now need to return to the item about minutes. So, do we have some? So, should we take these as amendments or alterations?
I do have some alterations to suggest.
To suggest those, we would accept them as a committee and then vote on them that we already have accepted them. Is that?
Yes. The statement that was previously made by Councillor Bradnam with regards to the establish a relationship quote, this has been rewritten to state the money received would be used to work collaboratively with Farming Wildlife Advisory Group East of England to make use of their established farming network to engage with local landowners, to ascertain appropriate locations for planting schemes and communicating with parish councils.
Are members happy with that? Can I see those in favour? So we take that as an alteration. We agreed we wouldn't alter the second one and the third point raised. Do you have some proposed alternate wording?
I think that was the third point raised, and the first one was with regards to pipe work and agreed to change, as long as that's an agreement.
Need to see the confirmed change to the pipe work. Does that just change to ducting?
So long as that's an agreement by committee.
So there's a proposal that the word pipe work is replaced with ducting. Can I see those in favour? Lovely. Thank you very much. Right. So, we happy? That is the final item today on today's agenda. Our next meeting is scheduled for the 4th of September 2025 at 10 a.m.
To interrupt, but do you want to just get confirmation?
Oh yes, I need to get confirmation of the minutes. Thank you. Can I see? So, bearing in mind the alterations to the minutes, can I see those before I close the meeting? Can I see those in favour of the minutes? They're carried. Can I see any abstentions? You weren't at the meeting. Thank you. They are carried. Thank you. that is the final item on today's agenda. Our next meeting is scheduled for 4 September 2025 at 10 a.m. I declare this meeting closed. So we'll have a 10-minute break and then there will be training on waste in 10 minutes.